Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming out to learn more about China and hyper-casual. So a little bit about me to start off. I started in mobile gaming in 2013. Worked for a few companies, Fiber, which is a mediation platform, HyperMX, which is a brand network out of New York. Most recently, I was the VP of Business Development at NativeX, and now I am the GM of the Americas for Mintegral. So a little bit more about Mintegral. We were founded in 2015. We have 9 offices around the world. We are the #1 ad platform in China and APAC, and we have over 200 employees with 150 million in revenue in 2017. So the goal for Mintegral is to be the bridge between the East and the West. And traditionally, a lot of developers who have Chinese traffic were actually Chinese developers. Now, as hyper-casual has become more popular, we find a lot of global developers having Chinese traffic. So our goal is really to educate the developers in the West about the opportunities of the East, and more recently, a lot of the Chinese developers with the game freeze, which we'll talk about later, are now expanding to the West as well. So some of the partners that we work with, which you can see here, you might recognize a lot of these icons. On the advertising side, some large players like Fun Games for Free, Jam City, and on the developer side, especially in the hyper-casual space, we work with Voodoo, Line Studios, Tasty Pill, Green Panda, Playrix, and Outfit 7. So to understand the opportunity in China, I think it's important to understand how mobile-focused China is. So China has, for the most part, skipped the PC, and 98% of Chinese users or internet-connected users access through a mobile phone. So there's a lot of reliance on the mobile device, and Chinese users expect to be able to do basically everything on their mobile device. Also an important concept when looking at it through the Chinese lens is the super app. So a good example of the super app is WeChat. Within WeChat, you can do many things. You can order a cab. You can order food. You can talk to your colleagues and send PDFs and Excels and do work. They also have a mini program within WeChat, which allows developers to insert their service into WeChat so the users don't have to leave WeChat. And a good example of this is to book a Didi, which is essentially a Chinese Uber or Lyft within the app. But more importantly, related to this talk, they have a mini program for games as well. So if you're developing hyper-casual games, you can also develop mini games within WeChat and basically leverage their 1 billion users. As I mentioned earlier, WeChat is the preferred method of communication. I know internally at Mintegral, we typically use WeChat more often than email. Another great thing about WeChat is that you can pay people instantly. It's basically anybody with WeChat you can pay. So there's no fragmentation between PayPal or Venmo or anything like that. And Chinese users are very familiar and basically is the norm to pay with their mobile phone, which is great for IAP. And you also can share moments within WeChat. You have to remember there's no Snap, there's no Instagram, there's no Facebook in China. So basically, WeChat is the super app where you can do all of that. So more on the opportunity of China. Here are some numbers, pretty staggering numbers: 782 million smartphone users. An important note is the 80-20 split between iOS and Android. And we see that game revenues are almost triple that of non-game revenues, which is a great opportunity for hyper-casual developers. And then more so drilling down into the opportunity for mobile games specifically, you can see, App Annie expects 120 billion downloads by 2022. And you can see here that China is essentially double the size of the US. So there's definitely opportunity now, and you can see there's pretty exponential growth until 2022. So we can talk about the reasons of why hyper-casual is popular in China. And I think the number one reason is accessibility. So for most users, hyper-casual is their first instance with games. This is where they learn gameplay, where they learn core loops, and it's very easy to essentially play your first title. China also has a lack of consoles, so PlayStation, Xbox, all these types of gaming consoles are not popular. So China has essentially skipped that, and mobile is their main gaming device. The age of mobile users in China is getting younger and younger, which is great for getting your audience and your brand out at an early age. There's also low commitment for hyper-casual games. So hyper-casual games have a propensity to convert traditional, like quote-unquote non-gamers into downloading a game and testing out their first game. And there's also been a focus on less of core gaming. So male Chinese users are typically playing less core games and playing more hyper-casual games as they are busier with their lives. So here's a snapshot of the top iOS publishers globally, and you can see here that there are quite a few Chinese companies, but there's also a lot of international companies on this list. So Voodoo is a large one and a good partner of ours. Joypack is also here with Playgendary and Outfit 7, and we see that there is going to be more global companies populating this list in the future. So the question typically comes down to, okay, we know the market size, we know that China is mobile only, we know there's huge opportunity. How do I get started, and do I start on iOS or Android? Well, the short answer is that you should do both. But I would say if you had to focus on one, you should focus on iOS, because iOS allows you to self-publish and kind of get started immediately. Whereas Android, you're going to kind of have to work with a local partner or / publisher, get a license, and basically get distribution through all the fragmented app stores in China. So China doesn't have standardized Google Play. They rather have more of hundreds of different app stores, of which the top 6 are probably going to drive the most volume, but you need a publisher with relationships with those app stores to kind of get you distribution. So some examples of those publishers are NetEase, Tencent, Joypack, Yoda One, and iDreamSky. And when you're considering an Android publisher, you should also look at their portfolio and what their expertise is. Some publishers focus on hardcore games, where other publishers focus more on hyper-casual games. One last note on iOS and Android. When it comes to hyper-casual, ad monetization is basically at the core of your business and helps you do more effective UA the higher the ad LTV you have. So iOS gives you an advantage there because the CPMs are quite high compared to Android. So it's just something to keep in mind. And then when you're looking at iOS and Android, if you are working with a publisher, typically it's used for Android, but if you get a better deal doing both iOS and Android and kind of taking China off your hands with working with a publisher, you can go that route as well. So the fun stuff is China regulation and the ever-changing kind of news around the bans of games and the approval of games. And the news right now is that China has revamped their process, and they've actually switched the game approval team. And during that process, a big chunk of 2018, there were essentially no game approvals. So right now they're kind of working through the backlog. But with that said, that really doesn't affect iOS. Again, with iOS, you can self-publish and kind of go live. But for Android, there's still a queue. I think they're doing around 110 games a month. So it's going to take some time. again, Android will need approval and license. And China is also having more restrictions on youth, specifically around bad vision concerns for youth and myopia. So Tencent has also taken notice of this, and they're actually limiting gameplay in one of their titles, Honor of Kings, restricting youth 13 to 18 playing two hours a day, and also limiting gameplay beyond 9 p.m. So all of these kind of, at least the restrictions on the amount of gameplay is also good news for hyper-casual and the quick iteration of gameplay. So when it comes to UA, I think it's important to utilize unique supply in China because that's going to essentially give you the most scale. And when you have more scale, you can optimize better. Also working with a local partner for your creatives. So I think a lot of developers tend to Google Translate or use an outsourced developer or outsourced translation service to kind of optimize their creatives. But I think working with a local partner in the Chinese market can help with localization, culturalization of your creatives, and that in turn increases your conversion rate for UA. It's also important to test multiple videos and playables to increase conversion. I think having a mix of both is important. And the key here for hyper-casual specifically is to convey some sort of value or your gameplay within the first few seconds so the user knows kind of exactly what they're getting when they download. So also here's kind of an example of some playable ads. And the importance of creative, at least from a UA bidding perspective, is that if you have strong UA creatives with your conversion rate multiplied by typically a low CPI for hyper-casual, you then can be competitive with more hardcore or core games, which is important because the higher your effective bid is in the waterfall, you'll be attracting, or you'll be higher in the waterfall, and you'll essentially get better quality users. So when you're looking at tracking tools, here are a few that we kind of recommend. Adjust and Tenjin do a great job. And if you're looking for some type of cost savings, you can also check out Hot Cloud as well for some cost efficiencies. So as mentioned before, the core of hyper-casual is really around ad monetization, and since hyper-casual is mainly ad-focused, most of your LTV is going to come from ads. So the more effective you can be on monetization, the better. So some of the ad platforms that you can use are Mintegral, ByteDance, and AdMob, specifically for the China market, and then some of the mediation partners in MoPub, AppLove, and UpARP, and UpLTV. And the idea is that you may or may not know, but China's average CPM is $20 to $30. Sometimes the CPMs are actually higher than English speaking. And the way that you kind of go about it is having the best localized partner for your traffic. So if you do plan to go into China, you want to make sure you match your supply with your demand and pick a specialized partner that handles that market. So you'll see a lot of the hyper-casual guys like Voodoo and Lion Studios work with specific partners on this list to make sure they have the highest ad LTV. So what type of ad formats should we be looking at specifically for hyper-casual? Hyper-casual is a genre where there are key game loops, short game loops, where there are a lot of natural breaks in the game. So interstitials are naturally a fit. There's also an area for rewarded video for different types of soft currencies or limited items. And you can also test splash ads or native ads. And since hyper-casual is basically all ad-focused, it's important to test multiple ad formats to see what kind of mix is best for your title. So in closing, remember to work with a local partner or publisher that has expertise in this market, not only for getting your app out there, but also for kind of your UA creatives and UA spend as well. stay current with the current regulation and news around China and mobile gaming. If you want to get started immediately, iOS is the way to go with basically the best monetization on the ad side. And make sure you review your ad stack to make sure you have a China-focused, APAC-focused network to handle your new traffic. And you want to leverage multiple creatives on the UA side and make sure they're localized and culturalized to have the best conversion rate. So with that, I would like to open it up if you guys have any questions about hyper-casual in China.
Do you guys have any questions? Yes, just a second. Make it easier.
Thank you. I've heard that there's a to have somebody in China that actually working with you can create more of a receptivity to your games. If it's like coming from within China, there tends to be a better uptick, better acceptance of your game. Is that something to consider, or am I hearing this wrong?
I don't think it matters too much in regards to where the game or where the game is actually published. But I do think if you have somebody there who is familiar with kind of like the cultural norms or the design of the game, like maybe using red or bold fonts or things like that, then that can definitely help with the aesthetics of the game, which may in turn be better for your game. But there's plenty of international studios without representation in China that are doing well in the hyper-casual market.
Okay, all right, great.
Any other question? Yes. Here you have it.
Is there any governmental review on the ad creatives that go through the ad networks at all, on that content itself?
Not the ad creatives, no. But you do want to be concerned about just the general restrictions on blood, violence, anything against the government.
Okay. Any other question? I think we have time for at least one more. Oh, okay, we can do both.
Oh, no, do that.
No, you can do first.
So back on the ad thing. So will the ad networks handle that for the developer?
Yes. Yeah. So
okay.
we can basically take in your assets and make sure that your creative is compliant. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I go there. Sorry, just a second, Jeff. I'm getting there.
Hi, I work with a global media company, and we license digital and print content from country to country. Mm-hmm. We've had a relationship with Copyright Agency of China for 3 years. We've only gotten 4 things approved, and they were children's books with no text. If we send them something with text, it just takes forever and it gets kicked back. Your company, are you able to take something through the process, or are you just figuring out where the loopholes are and then we drive trucks through it?
Yeah, so for us, we're basically working with apps that are kind of already approved, helping them get more users or monetizing their existing users. I think it's more so the publishing companies that are going to help you get the license and the approval.
And now we have to go. Okay. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thanks, everybody.